Does Göbekli Tepe rewrite history? 12,000 years ago, there was no writing, no wheel, no metal, and no agriculture. But people were building temples from massive stones. This is exactly where Göbekli Tepe challenges human history. Until today, the history we were taught was this. First, people learned agriculture, adopted a settled life, built villages, and only then did belief systems and temples emerge. In other words, the process progressed as civilization arrow religion. However, Göbekli Tepe reverses this chain, because Göbekli Tepe was built thousands of years before the beginning of agriculture. Göbekli Tepe is located in southeastern Turkey near Şanlıurfa. It stands about 760 meters above sea level, at a point overlooking a vast plain. This was not a randomly chosen place. It is a hill visible from all directions, noticeable from great distances. And beneath this hill lie the oldest known monumental structures of humanity. Göbekli Tepe is approximately 12,000 years old. This means it is about 7,500 years older than the Egyptian pyramids and 6,000 years older than Stonehenge. This alone is enough to shake history books. But what is truly shocking is who built these structures and how. The people living at that time are described as hunter-gatherers. That is, people who moved in small groups, used temporary shelters, and did not practice agriculture. So how could such a society cut stones weighing 50 to 60 tons? How did they transport them? How did they erect them? And more importantly, why? At Göbekli Tepe, there are circular plan structures. At the center of these structures stand enormous T-shaped stone pillars. These pillars are not ordinary stones. They feature carvings of snakes, scorpions, foxes, birds, and abstract symbols. On some pillars, human arms and hands are clearly visible. This suggests that these stones most likely represent humans. And this leads us to think Göbekli Tepe was not a settlement area, but a ritual center. There is almost no evidence of daily life here, no hearths, no houses, no trash areas. But there is a temple. This may mean that people came here not to live, but to believe. Perhaps different tribes gathered here at certain times of the year, performing rituals and holding ceremonies. At this point, history turns upside down. Perhaps people did not come together first for agriculture, but first for temples. And to feed these crowds, they were forced to develop agriculture. In other words, belief may have given birth to agriculture. This radically changes our perspective on human history. One of the most mysterious aspects of Göbekli Tepe is this. These massive structures were deliberately buried with soil after use, not a natural destruction, not an abandonment. Almost a ritual closure. But why? According to some researchers, the reason was a change in belief systems. Old rituals lost their meaning, and people chose to close this sacred site. According to others, Göbekli Tepe contained dangerous knowledge or power and needed to be hidden. We do not have a definitive answer. But one thing is certain. Something had come to an end. The person who introduced Göbekli Tepe to the world was the German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt. According to Schmidt, Göbekli Tepe may even have inspired humanity's story of being expelled from paradise. Because here, humans placed themselves at the center, began to control nature, and perhaps for the first time, made the concept of the sacred tangible. Göbekli Tepe shows us one thing clearly. Humans were capable of abstract thinking, producing symbols, and forming social organization. Much earlier than we thought. In other words, they were not primitive. We just assumed they were. Even today, a large part of Göbekli Tepe remains underground. The excavated area represents only a small fraction of the entire site. Who knows what else lies beneath the soil? Perhaps answers that will completely change the history we know. Göbekli Tepe tells us one clear thing. Human history is not a straight line, and it has not yet been fully written. So perhaps the real question should be, does Göbekli Tepe rewrite history? Or does it show us how incomplete our understanding of history truly is?